Africa loves football, lives it with purity, and the Africa Cup of Nations is a spectacular competition where the atmosphere reflects this passion of the fans. This event brings out legendary football players and strong characters. Some aspects that make this tournament unique are the fact that it takes place every 2 years, unlike the European Championship or the World Cup, and it takes place in the middle of the European competitive season, despite the fact that many African footballers play for European clubs. The Africa Cup of Nations project originated in the 1950s, a period when many African countries gained independence. Football became a means to express national identity and affirm decolonization. The African Football Confederation was officially recognized as an independent entity by FIFA in 1954, at a time when only 5 African countries were independent: Liberia, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Libya. In fact, the first president of the African Confederation was an Egyptian, Abdel Aziz Abdallah Salem, an engineer, former Cambridge student, and former footballer, who also donated the first trophy for the Africa Cup of Nations. The details of an African Continental Cup in football were established in 1956 at a FIFA conference in Portugal. 4 countries, Egypt, Ethiopia, South Africa, and the newly independent Sudan, agreed to launch this competition. Because Egypt was considered the best national team, it was expected that the Africa Cup of Nations would take place on the land of the Pharaohs. However, at the end of 1956, Israel attacked Egypt, followed by the Suez Canal crisis, which made Egypt an unsafe country. As a consequence, Sudan offered to host the African Cup of Nations in Khartoum in early 1957 for the 4 teams. According to the draw, Sudan was to face Egypt and Ethiopia on South Africa. However, South Africa, where apartheid, a system of racial segregation by whites, had been established, was excluded from the competition by the 3 countries that did not want to accept such discrimination. Therefore, Ethiopia qualified for the final without playing, and Egypt beat the host country, Sudan, 2-1. In the final, the so-called Pharaohs defeated Ethiopia 4-0, with all goals scored by Mohamed Ad Diba, the first star of the Africa Cup of Nations. Mohamed Ad Diba was nearing the end of his career, with this competition marking its pinnacle. After 1958, he transitioned to refereeing and went on to officiate the 1968 final. The second edition of the Africa Cup of Nations took place in 1959 in Cairo, again with 3 teams. However, in the meantime, Egypt had united with Syria under the political name of the United Arab Republic. Despite this union, the team only had Egyptian players. The 3 teams played each other, and Egypt won the trophy after 2 victories, 4-0 against Ethiopia and 2-1 against Sudan. This edition also gave us what is probably one of the most underrated goals in football history. The decisive goal by Egypt's Bahig, which secured victory in the match against Sudan, is a masterpiece. Competition evolved in the 1960s due to the growing number of teams entering the qualifiers, as more African countries gained independence and began participating with their national teams in the Africa Cup of Nations. The 3rd edition was in 1962 in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa. 4 teams played in a knockout system. Ethiopia defeated Tunisia, and the United Arab Republic beat Uganda. The final was decided in extra time, where Ethiopia ended Egyptian domination with a score of 4-2. These were the glory days for the team nicknamed the Walia Ibex, thanks to 2 legendary players, Mengistu Worku and Luciano Vassallo. Worku is considered the greatest Ethiopian footballer in history, even though he only played in the domestic league. Luciano Vassallo was half Ethiopian, half Italian, and is nicknamed the Di Stefano of Ethiopia. The 4th edition took place in 1963 in Ghana, showing that even the African political world was becoming interested in football. Ghana's political leader, Kwame Nkrumah, invested in football, and the results were not long in coming. There were 6 teams in this edition, divided into 2 groups, and the winners of each group played in the final. The president of Ghana brought in Charles Gyamfi, the first African to play in Germany as coach, and the decision proved to be inspired. Ghana won their group and played Sudan in the final, defeating them 3-0. The dream of Nkrumah and the Ghanaian nation had been fulfilled only 6 years after the country had become independent. The 5th edition of the Africa Cup of Nations was held in 1965 in Tunisia. Although the United Arab Republic had qualified, they declined to participate due to pro-Israel statements made by the president of Tunisia. Sudan was invited to replace them, but also refused, leading to Congo stepping in as their replacement. Ghana demonstrated the same strength they had shown in the previous tournament, winning all their matches, including the final against Tunisia. With Tunisian President Bourguiba and the FIFA president in attendance, the final was decided in extra time, with Ghana emerging victorious once again and securing their 2nd trophy. Ghana was the favorite in the 6th edition of the Africa Cup of Nations in 1968, reaching the final but failing to win it. The tournament was hosted by Ethiopia and saw an increase in the number of teams from 6 to 8, with 2 groups of 4, the top 2 advancing to the knockout stage. In the final, Ghana faced Congo, then known as Congo-Kinshasa, now the Democratic Republic of Congo. At the time, the country was led by Joseph Désiré Mobutu, known as Mobutu Sese Seko, who admired Ghanaian leader Kwame Nkrumah and had ambitious plans for his national football team. Mobutu even changed the team's nickname from the Lions to the Leopards. After a hard-fought match, Congo narrowly defeated Ghana 1-0 to claim the trophy. Upon the team's return, they visited Mobutu's residence, where Mobutu, dressed in military uniform, awarded the players medals and posed for photographs with them. As we have seen, during its first decade, the Africa Cup of Nations became stable and rapidly evolved from a competition featuring just 3 teams into a major event. The passion was evident, but so was the politics. The tournament will continue to expand in the coming decades, as we will explore in the next episode. Until then, don't forget to share your impressions and subscribe to our channel, QED Sport.